Hello and welcome to Round Robin. I'm your host, Robin McCormick with the City of Hampton. And today we are going to talk about the mom's role in raising strong and healthy daughters. My guest is Alvean Lyons from Healthy Families. Welcome.
Thank you.
Moms are wonderful.
Aren't they though?
We are. Sometimes we try to do too much, but it is important to look at this. And you had daughters, I didn't have daughters, so I'm going to be learning as we talk. I was a surrogate mom to some girls, so there's some applicable things there.
Oh, of course. And the reality is that for as long as we are walking around this earth as women, in some way we are shaping the way other young women are seeing themselves. Mm-hmm. We don't think about it very often. We're just doing what we do, But if you really talk to young girls about the images and the messages that have been sent about what womanhood is, what beauty is, what being wonderful is, all of those things have been shaped both internally inside of the homes and externally, the women that they see out in the street all the time. So the truth is, whether or not you have daughters, you are affecting someone's daughter by what it is that we do and how we carry ourselves out in the community. So we're going to talk about 3 V's to be able to speak to some of the things we could be doing in terms of our mother factor in raising young women and the mentorship that we do to the women that are not even our own daughters. The first one is vision. When we did the father factor, talked about that.
It's very similar.
Absolutely. Vision is something that is important no matter what gender we're talking about. There's certain things that in parenting, it doesn't matter whether you're raising a son or you're raising a daughter. There's certain things that they're just going to need from us as parents. So it is also true that vision is a huge factor for young girls. What vision are we creating for them? What images are we presenting to them? What are we saying to them about what their purpose is supposed to be? Are we just communicating that the thing that defines you is whether or not you have a significant other? That somehow you are less of a woman if you don't have a partner? Somehow your value is less if you are not this thing? Do we expose them to opportunities that suggest that women don't have to be the traditional anymore? If you want to be a scientist, be a scientist. If you're strong when it comes to managing money or doing numbers, be an economist if that's what you want to be. If you love water, be an oceanographer. The reality is that just because many of the things that were traditionally male roles in our community, we have taken them away from our daughters as part of their vision, we're robbing our community of some of the most brilliant contributors they could have because we are limiting our own girls by their gender. And if your mommy's going to do that to you, you will let the world do it to you without even thinking about it. So it is so important for us as we are considering who our children want to be. If your daughter wants to be a basketball player, there are even semi-pro girl football teams. If that's what she wants to do, be supportive.
Well, I think too that there's an exposure factor here, again, that we talked about before, but you can't have a vision if you don't know what's possible.
Absolutely.
And, movies like Hidden Figures, which I love to plug because it was a Hollywood mainstream movie about women who broke those barriers under doubly difficult circumstances, racism and sexism, and yet had their eye on the mission. Their vision wasn't about making a scene, it was about we're going to get this man on the moon. We are going to change. Right. We are going to help the country recognize this vision. And it was beautiful. It's a true story. It's set right here.
Absolutely.
It shows us and our daughters what they can be. And they don't have to take that path, but they need to know that path is open.
That it exists. And you're absolutely right. Sometimes what our limitations are simply a byproduct of the lack of exposure to anything else.
Right.
That we don't even realize that we could be or we could do until the first one does it. Often people don't even...
Be president.
Absolutely.
We're still not there yet, but we'll get there.
That is exactly right. Until we break that glass ceiling, it is hard for people to believe, and for girls in particular to believe, that they're capable of doing certain kinds of things. And it's important that our language suggests that all of those things are possible, even if we're saying to our daughters that you can be the first. There is nothing wrong with the fact that it hasn't been done. That it hasn't been done before has nothing to do with whether or not it will be done. And why can't it be you? Someone will cure cancer. Someone will cure AIDS. Someone's going to cure diabetes. Why couldn't it be your daughter? There is no such thing as them not being able to be anything, quite honestly. So why are we creating those limitations? We have to give them vision. We have to expose them to the limitless potential of who they can be as human beings. Without doing so, we are doing them a disservice. And quite honestly, we also do our community as a whole a disservice.
You rob the world of this skill.
The potential and the creativity. So I think the vision is super important. And when we talk about it in terms of how it impacts young women, in our current statistics, we are seeing just as many young women now getting involved in violent behavior, criminal activity, dropping out of school. No. The list goes on and on. Oh, unfortunately, it's as we get gender neutral in all kinds of things, we get gender neutral in all kinds of things, sometimes not the great things. We're seeing more juvenile detention participation, if I could say it as nicely as possible. We're seeing more girls. And we want to change that. We need to change that. We don't want any children, to be raised by the penal system in any form or fashion.
No.
But we also need to understand what is feeding a lot of this. And when we look at what's feeding it, a lot of our youth are still struggling with lack of hope, which is a byproduct of a lack of vision. And whether it's a girl or a boy, it doesn't make a difference. It has real impact. So making a point as a mom to be able to say, have I helped my child develop vision for their own lives? Have I let my little girl know that she can do and be all things? Am I speaking to those things? Am I creating opportunities to the best of my ability for those things? If I don't know certain things, am I connecting her with people who may know things I don't know? As mommies, we don't have to know everything. We don't have to have it all perfect. But there's so many people that exist in our lives on a daily basis that we bump shoulders with, that we don't even realize the value that relationship could have in helping to develop our own children. So utilize the benefits, even your schools. Talk to your school counselors. Talk to
a teachers. Favorite teacher.
Absolutely. Talk to some of the coaches. Talk to the head of the music department. Talk to the folks that are there. They are there for your kids, and they want good for your kids. And they have resources that we are not familiar with. So when you realize your child has an aptitude for something, communicate with somebody who may be related to the field, and let that, as a parent, you can also be a bridge. You don't have to be the destination. Sometimes just being a bridge to connect your kid with someone who can help them take that next step is the most loving and effective thing we can do as a parent. So vision is our first thing.
Well, and the other part of vision, as you say, is you may not be in great socioeconomics.
Absolutely.
It might be a tough, rough time in mom's life, in kids' life.
Indeed.
But being able to look ahead and find the path out that is the positive path is so crucial there.
Indeed, indeed. And in the most difficult places in our country, you will discover, and I should actually say in our world, you will discover that even moms who are struggling with issues of starvation still have dreams for their kids, and they communicate those dreams to their kids. Whether or not the circumstances are beyond the point in which those may be achieved is a little bit different, because serious poverty is a very different story than what many of us experience in our country.
Right.
But in our country, with the gift of being an American, there is so much that we're capable of doing and being. We are supposed to share those dreams and nurture those dreams in our kids. By giving them vision, we are giving them a gift that will be feeding them for the rest of their lives.
Well, and we all want our kids to do better, to be better than
Indeed.
we were. And one of the things we're finding is that's not happening right now.
Right.
In our society, across the board, it's not an inner city thing, it's a rural thing, it's everywhere. There's generational shifts where people who don't get the education aren't really able to compete in the job market, aren't able to succeed in the way you could get a high school diploma and get a great job before.
Absolutely.
I mean, you really have to have some specialized training or education in order to make it. And people aren't used to necessarily instilling that as the pathway from the get-go.
Indeed. The education is essential, and the other thing is creativity. because a lot of what's happening in the evolution in our society, technology advances and the like, are a byproduct of creativity. To be able to look at something and say, this is how I might be able to make that better. But that also requires a level of vision, encouraging and nurturing the idea where your kids are concerned that what is does not have to always be. There are always ways to improve and expand something, but that is nurtured in our children in the way that we communicate to them. That we don't create these messages and these narratives that say that because this is how it is, this is how it will always be. Because we are putting their creativity in a box. But what we want to do is we want to give them the guidelines, you know, to be able to say, here's some things you're going to need. Academics are important, responsibility is important, you know, there are things that you're going to need. But with all of those things, the you factor in all of it, you can do whatever it is that you are created to do. And don't limit that by virtue of the fact that you're a girl.
And you might get to this later. The other thing is, we do have to tell our girls, you are responsible for you.
Yes.
Because you cannot assume Prince Charming
is going to come
will
fix
solve
it.
all your problems.
That's exactly right.
You can't. And it might happen. You might have a great, wonderful sharing relationship,
right.
but you also might not. Or it might not happen right away.
Absolutely.
Or he, you know, it might not turn out to be as good as it looked from the very beginning. You know, you have to prepare. And I think girls weren't, well, I mean, I know my mom's generation, my grandmother's generation, they weren't taught that.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And you've got to have that cultural shift.
Well, something beautiful about what it is that you said. I, you know, in addition to the work I do with Healthy Families and for our city, I actually get to do a lot of work with women in women's conferences and relationship conferences and the like. And one of the things that comes up all the time is the fact that most men are attracted to women who are very capable in their own right. So the confidence that comes from knowing that you can take care of you is a wonderful and wildly attractive component. So technically, if you really do want Prince Charming actually is attracted to a whole human being. Very few people are seeking someone who is 100% dependent on them
That's what
for
I was
anything.
going to say. Those gender stereotypes put people in boxes. And with the boxes gone, we're not always sure how to react and how to teach our kids. But I think you're right. Men don't want to have all the responsibility.
Absolutely.
And women don't want to have none of the responsibility.
Absolutely.
So how do we become true
partners,
equal whole people separately? And then potentially
bring that together.
Else.
Absolutely. Be 100% and let that other person be 100%. And together you create a whole relationship. But don't be a half a person attached to another half a person because you're going to get half a relationship. You know, so we really want you to have vision for more, that you are not limited by the fact that you are a young girl. You are only limited by what you do to yourself, but we don't want you to create any barriers where that's concerned. So as moms, we have to communicate vision where our daughters are concerned. The next thing is value. I cannot tell you how often I find myself having conversations with beautiful, capable women who do not know their own value. And as a result, their young girls are growing up with those same deficiencies. So they've got teenage daughters who are participating in all kinds of activity, many of which are high risk because they're looking for something outside of themselves that really has to come from within. Right. So I'm looking for boyfriends, girlfriends, whatever it is, in order to feel better about me, as opposed to learning to develop that thing for myself. But broken girls are often the byproduct of broken moms. If we are not whole, it's very hard to raise a whole female. We've got to address some of our own issues, make sure that we've dealt with them. And I'm not saying perfection, and you've heard me say that before.
Oh, right.
We're not looking for perfection. We're just looking for wholeness. That I'm not walking around with this great big hole on the inside of me that I'm looking for the world to fill for me. But rather, I'm addressing those issues for myself so that I can come into a relationship, or in relationship even with my own children. I don't just mean romantically, but in a relationship with my own children, my family, whomever is in my life, in a whole manner, because we are healthier when we are whole. But we've got to know what our own personal value is in order to do that.
And we can't let society define it. I
Absolutely.
think little girls are so inundated with the Princess Barbie beauty kind of image that when you accept that, then you are always looking for someone else to tell you who you are. What do I look like from the outside is the most important thing. I always, I can't remember who told me this, but when you meet a little girl, everyone has this tendency, oh, she's so cute, she's so pretty. And not,
oh, she's so
what
smart.
do you like to do in school? Tell me about a book you've read. What is your favorite game to play? You know, things that we do with boys, we don't do with girls. That's on us. They're not going to change and grow up whole if we don't change.
That is absolutely true. And that made me think about when I was raising my kids, my girls, because of course I have 2 young adult daughters now. And when I was raising them, I never made them kiss their uncles if they didn't want to. I always taught them to be respectful. You always say hello, you address all the adults in the room. But you don't have to allow someone into your physical space that you don't want in your physical space, neither your uncles nor your aunties. To me, they are my brothers and my sisters or my cousins, whoever they may be. I'm an adult who has had a lifelong relationship with them, and I can make that choice to allow them into my physical space. But to my child, I am forcing them to ignore their comfort zone, to allow someone into that space because somebody else told you you should.
Right.
And then when they get older, then you're upset with them that why were you dating this guy or hanging out with these people in these environments and you let this thing get out of hand. She doesn't trust herself. You've taught her not to trust herself. Ignore your instincts and that your personal zone does not have to be respected. Then in order to please someone else or to make other people feel comfortable, you ignore how you feel. And those signs, those are designed to keep us safe. And they have to be nurtured when our kids are young so that they know to trust their own instincts as they get older. And as women, it's extremely important that we trust our instincts when something feels off. You need to say, you know what? Even if I'm being a little overly cautious, better be over in terms of cautiousness than under.
That's right.
For safety purposes. But all of those messages are being sent by the people around them, and particularly their parents, and then specifically, we moms have a tendency to do it. We want everybody to like our little girls and to think they're adorable and they're sweet and all of those things. And so we're teaching them
to be adorable and sweet.
To be adorable and sweet and accommodating and ignoring of their own feelings. And it comes back to bite them later on when they get older because they are not able to determine their own value and their own boundaries. That's being done outside of them. We've got to give that to them so that they trust it for themselves when they become young women. And it'll be tested 1,000 times when they're teenagers. What boys, because everybody's testing boundaries, was it okay that he walked past you and he smacked your bottom? Was that okay? No, it was not. And just because other people thought it was funny doesn't mean that you should ignore it. That is your personal space. And you have the right to say that under no circumstances will you touch me if I have not invited you to do so, and feel confident in standing up for yourself.
Because you have to learn with the smaller things.
That is exactly right. Or you'll ignore it on the big things. So there's no question about the fact that we have a responsibility in teaching our kids their value. So that's our second one. Our final one is virtue. Somehow that word has disappeared from our society. It is in the character, the integrity, the honor associated with how we handle ourselves and how we handle others. We have to come back to some of that richness that did exist when you and I were younger, when we really understood that there are certain things that when you say you're going to do something, do what you say. When people aren't watching, do the right thing anyway. It's not just while everybody's paying attention that we do the right thing. We got to do the right thing because it's the right thing.
Well, it gets to also that hole where we're looking for the external validation. If we're doing the right thing because we're doing it for us, if we are dressing for ourselves, not for external approval, if we are making ourselves feel good, then we don't have to just do it for someone else. And it gets to the character of who we are. We're that way all the time. We don't put on to be in front of people. We're ourselves.
That is exactly right. It has to come from the inside. Everything that we do on the outside is really just an outpouring of what's going on the inside. It's part of the reason why you'll hear the phrase that hurting people hurt people. Because whatever's going on the inside pours and spills out in all the relationships that are exterior to us. So if our character is at the core of who we are, then that's how we will conduct ourselves in other things. We will have integrity, we will have ethics, we will have honor, we will be moral, we will have standards, we will have values. All of those things come from the inside and pour outward in all of those interactions. But it's true that it has to start here. It has to start central to who we are. But those things are nurtured from our parents. So, and yes, if we didn't have fabulous parents, there may be some things that we have to develop as adults. No question about it. We all didn't get perfect parents.
Well, and society plays a role too. And,
sure.
I'm older than you, but I was certainly not encouraged to play sports.
Right.
I would have been horrible. So, I did get into it a little bit. But, and there was, I think, still more of the external girls have to look pretty thing. So I think, too, if we didn't get that, we need to work on healing ourselves, or at least in front of our kids, because I think boys need to see it as well as girls.
Agreed.
We have to not obsess over it. We have to not mention our diets at every single meal, and our makeup or how we look. I mean, we have to de-emphasize that in ourselves to heal ourselves, but also to grow our kids in the way that we need them to grow.
Indeed. And there's nothing wrong with looking your best, because that's not what we're saying.
It gives us confidence.
It makes you feel great about
but
you.
I do it for me.
But that's exactly the point. What you put on because it makes you happy.
Right.
What you put on because you feel beautiful, not because you're waiting for somebody else to tell you that.
And confidence is beautiful.
It is.
It's more important than a nose job.
It's so attractive, because it doesn't matter if you look flawless on the outside, but on the inside you see an ugly person. It's not going to make a difference. And quite honestly, if you see yourself as beautiful on the inside and things don't look fabulous on the outside, it actually changes the way people see you, because you carry yourself like a swan, not like a duck. So a lot of the things that we're going to do in our lives, the greatest gifts we're going to give to our children when we're raising strong young women, come from nurturing those things that are going to be central to who they are. And for us today, those are those 3 V's. We want to make sure that you have vision. We want to make sure that you have values and you understand your value, and you have virtue, standards, morals, and ethics. All of those things start here and they pour out everywhere else. But they help us to be strong as women. And in this society, you need to raise strong women.
Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much, Alvean.
Oh, my pleasure.
And thank you for watching. Great tips in this. And I know we're focused on raising young women, but these tips also help our young men, because they have to learn to be partners with some of these young women, and they have to learn how to treat women in the workplace and in the home and everything else. So be that model and raise those great future generation of women who will help contribute to this country. Thanks for watching.